Okay, in October we have a solo birthday, that is Mary's. So happy birthday, Mary's, and this is a song for
Thank
you.
you.
Birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Marie.
Happy birthday, Maurice. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Maurice. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Maurice. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Maurice. Oh yeah. Feliz cumpleaños, Maurice. My dog says to you, Maurice. My dog says, ah, Maurice, birthday, Maurice. Happy birthday, Maurice. Feliz cumpleaños, Maurice. Yeah.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday,
Happy
Maurice.
birthday.
Lovely.
Thanks, that was amazing.
Birthday.
Thank you
Happy
so much.
birthday.
Amazing, amazing.
Happy birthday. Personalized song. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Wonderful.
From everybody and their doggo. So I love that. My doggo. Yeah, thanks, that's amazing.
Too good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention the picture 305. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, now we are moving to the selection of the book for to be read in October for November session. Chacha wanted to look at 3 different topics he suggested, and people overwhelmingly wanted to read about the people who don't talk. So I think that helps some of us who don't talk, and what introverts can make a difference. I think Chacha is going to lead us for the November session. Okay, now starting the session on the biographies.
There's an American saying, before you judge a man, walk 2 miles in his shoes. There's a more culturally dodgy version of that. Before you judge a man, walk 2 moons in his moccasins. All writers need to do this. It's particularly true for writers of biography. Although in the case of biography, you're more likely to walk 2 decades than 2 moons. You should beware of the friend who's a writer, especially if they write fiction. Don't tell them your juicy family gossip. God, don't tell them your relationship mistakes, because writers steal. We're eavesdroppers, we're thieves. And isn't that true of all literary imagining of other people's experience? Isn't it a kind of misappropriation? Well, all literary imagining of other people's experiences, except biography, of course. After all, biography is a factual account of a real life. The life, that life story exists independent of the person writing about it. The subjects of biographies aren't characters that you imagine like a novelist. Their experiences happened, but at the same time their characters and their stories are also the creation of the biographer's imagination. Of course, writing biography involves imagining someone else's experience. Many fiction writers fall in love with their characters. They feel them coming alive, and the same is true for biographers. Many biographers dream of their subject. They talk to them. They feel them sitting beside them in the car or at the dinner table or in the archive. There you are, the biographer, walking through a landscape where your subject once lived, and there's your subject, peeking over behind your shoulder, commenting on how it's changed. As a biographer, you become obsessed by your subject. You become obsessed by the person that you're researching and writing about. And then, after a short while, you are effectively possessed by them. Long after you're done, they hang around because you're never really done. And part of the reason you're never really done is because your story is only a version of their lives. You're never sure you got it right or whether it's true.
I'm sure Monty will echo the similar sentiments.
An American saying.
Over to you, Milind.
Thank you. Thank you, Srinivas. I wanted to just have you look at the picture to the left. And if you squint a little as you look at the picture, you'll see a person reading in the water.
Oh, yeah.
So my conclusion is when you look carefully, you will find book lovers everywhere. So, with that, let me come to the theme for the day. These authors and what they have written appeal to me because they appeared to me as emissaries for mankind. Through these biographies and autobiographies, they were striving to preserve the good from the past for the promise of more glorious future times. Whether battling cancer at a young age, whether trying to preserve the culture and monuments from an ancient world, whether carrying the message of humanity in all religions across the globe, they all gave voice to that which was worthy of preserving for generations to come. And as book lovers, we have rightly delighted in have all of them come to visit us today because we are going to talk about all three books. So today, as the reader of the month, Pushpita has carefully selected these three biographies, autobiographies that bring together a trinity of themes: history, health, and happiness. So let's listen to her overview of these selected books and then we'll go on with the reflections. So, all yours, Pushpita. Go ahead.
Thanks, Milind. That was very nicely summarized. I was trying very hard to find connections between the topics, but you brought them all together. Uh,
Mhm.
some stories are told and many more are untold, but everyone that is told provides us with insights into the real world experiences of awesome individuals while motivating us to get a deeper understanding of ourselves. The realist in me has always been attracted to autobiographies, biographies, true stories, while the dreamer in me has used their experiences as lessons for personal growth and self reflection and to stay inspired. It was a difficult task to select three books in this genre, as there's such a myriad of aspects to choose from. Also, over the years as a group, we've read a few amazing autobiographies already. I was keen to pick some books that are not necessarily on the most popular list and yet are worthy of our time while adding to our intellectual, emotional, or spiritual selves. The three areas I selected were history, health, and happiness, significant historical past, a healthy future, and happiness that is all pervading and has no time boundaries. Honestly, I won't try to stretch your imagination and draw a link amongst the three, but I think Millen's done a pretty good job of it. I will leave it to our very capable reflectors, uh, Kenny, Saida, and Gautam, to share the insights of the books. And with your permission, I'd like to keep my narrative a bit more personal.
Mhm.
The Empress of the Nile by Lynn Olson was a draw card for me to try and understand the trials and tribulations that a female archaeologist would have had to endure in the early 20th century. And I was inspired by the courage she must have had to take on an epic project that seemed almost impossible. Impossible not because she was a woman, but because she was a woman who lived in those times. The
Mhm.
Parisian born archaeologist Christiane Desroches' noble court had risen to the top of a profoundly misogynist profession due to her passion for Egyptology, her perseverance, and a strong drive to preserve the history and culture of Egypt, not for the sake of any one country, but for humanity to enjoy and appreciate in centuries to come. A head of Louvre's Egyptian department remembered her as very dynamic but also tiring. She wanted everything done in a minute. No wonder then that in less than a year, a one woman campaign had morphed into the beginning of a massive international effort. The mission was to save the towering Abu Simbel temples and their 4 colossal statues of Ramesses II, from the imminent flooding to be caused by the opening of President Nasser's Aswan High Dam. The book, however, turned out to be a smattering of the character of Desroches' noble court and more about the historical and geopolitical narratives of the challenges that she faced with the finances needed and the political games played to get the project off the ground and into completion. I didn't mind these digressions into history because in the process, I learned some fascinating and previously unknown to me facts into Egyptian history, museum rivalries, plundering of archaeological sites, the 1956 Suez Crisis, and more. Also, the involvement of Jacqueline Kennedy, Princess Margaret of Denmark, and others in the project. The mammoth task of relocating the temple piece by piece within such a short time frame was an engineering feat of the times that could have only been successful due to the vision, drive, passion, and perseverance of someone like Desroches' noble court, who never lost hope against all odds. Glaring contrast to the recent relocation of 20 royal mummies transported through Cairo. I'm not sure if some of you have had the chance to see that video on YouTube. A lot of fanfare and gala. The other book, Everything Happens for a Reason by Kate Bowler, intrigued me because one of my key acceptances in life that everything happens for a reason was being proclaimed by the author, Kate Bowler, to be a lie, although she adds that it's among other lies that she has loved. What tough challenges could life present to a 35-year-old theology professor with a successful career, happy marriage, miracle son who arrived after years of trying to conceive? She had spent a good part of her adult life researching a form of Christianity called the prosperity gospel that believes that God wants you to prosper and will reward you with health and wealth if you are good and you believe. However, when she was handed out an untimely diagnosis of stage 4 colon cancer, she sets out on a journey to understand why this has happened to her. I found her brutally honest approach, laced with wit and humor, almost ridiculing the world of positivity, quite fascinating, and yet at times confusing, just as she must have been trying to figure out life. Just remember that if cancer or divorce or tragedies of all kinds don't kill you, people's good intentions will. Take the phrase, but they mean well, as your cue and run screaming from the room, she said. I'm not sure how I felt about that, but then putting myself in her shoes wasn't easy either. I want to share a little episode with my son. My spiritually enlightened younger son asked me a few years back, Mom, are you afraid of death? That was an easy one to answer, and I promptly said, No, but I may be afraid of any suffering that may come before death. He then changed his question to, Are you ready to die now? I must admit that was a thought-provoking and confrontational question, and I found myself saying, yes, but conditionally. The condition was my family should be looked after, I've just started a business, that should go well, etc., etc. Death is not a topic that is often discussed in families, and perhaps it should, because if there's one thing that's certain about life, it's death. We do to take our good health for granted. Like most of us, Kate could not picture a world where she was simply gone or wasn't part of her husband's and son's lives. As she goes through this understanding of life, not just through her own experiences and reflections, but through observing the sufferings of others, she finally comes to terms with the fact that not all pain has to be explained. There may be a reason, but we don't always need to figure that out, but instead accept and surrender. To believers in the prosperity gospel, surrender sounds like defeat. According to Kate, they are addicted to self-rule, and so was she. I might just skip some of the quotes I had put in from the book because some of them really grabbed my attention. and just carry on. Kate has survived well beyond the initial 3 months that was doled out to her. Often, like Kate, we want to skip to the end, desperate to know what's going to happen so we can prepare. And in that, we do miss the moment. That lesson from Kate led me very well into the living Vedanta, Swami Vivekananda's story. My earliest memories of Swami Vivekananda goes back to when I was about 10 years old in school, when at home my uncle hung up a picture of the Swami in his burnt orange turban and robe and said that was a picture of his guru. Too young to explore any further, I let it rest at the back of my mind somewhere until a decade back when I joined a Vedanta forum in Melbourne, where a small group would meet monthly for a discourse on various aspects of some of the living Vedanta lessons. That is what led me to read Chaturvedi Badrinath's biography of Swami Vivekananda, The Living Vedanta. I would like to share some of my key thoughts from the book. The author says that many traits of Swami Vivekananda's personality, born as Narendranath, were in the blood. A questioning mind, an intellectual willingness to accept that there may be another truth, spiritual humility, renunciation of the world, but at the same time retaining the joy of music, poetry, literature, love, and friendship. He saw no incompatibility between these and sannyasa rightly understood. Most of all, it meant remaining sensitive to the pain and suffering of others. To this, he added what he inherited from his master Sri Ramakrishna Paramahans, to open one's arms in a genuine feeling of the oneness of all life, even to the wicked, the terrible, the ugly, and then rejoice. The greatest human inheritance is love, in which all are one. I believe when a master descends on earth, he or she remains in that human form to impart lessons to humanity that will stay relevant for centuries to come. Vivekananda was one such master who lived a short life of 39 years and took samadhi at 9 in the night back home in India on 4th July 1902. In April 1902, he told his friend Joe McLeod, I shall never see 40. I delivered my message and I must go. And that message stays alive and relevant to this day and beyond. My takeaway from the book, true happiness and peace will come from within when we are able to imbibe some of these messages into our very being and not just intellectually. That this is not an easy task, but I hope it's one we will all endeavor to achieve. Thank you, Milind.
Thank
And
you so
thanks.
much, Pushpita. Yeah, that
Thank
was
you.
Excellent,
really
Monty. Very nice.
very nicely done.
Yeah.
And you
Very
brought
brilliant.
out both the emotional, cultural, and spiritual aspect of what can come through in biographies and autobiographies so well. So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Thanks, Milind.
Yeah, we now go ahead and see first off to bat is Kenny, who is an ardent fan of Egyptian history. In fact, anything Egyptian. So we could not have had a better reflector than him
He
for
looks like
Empress
he's
of
on
the
an
Nile
Egyptian dig in the
by
photograph.
Lynn Olson. Okay. So go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah.
We'd like to
Hi.
know what you think about Empress of the Nile.
Yeah. So anyway, so thank you for that introduction. And can you hear me? I hope it's clear.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
we
then
can.
now, Pushpita, thank you so much for introducing me to this book. But no thanks for giving the complete plot away right in the beginning in your introduction.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So anyway, this book, as you all guess, is about Christian Desroches ne Noble Cour, to give a proper pronunciation
I
in
couldn't
French.
say the name.
Desroches Noble Cour, yeah. But I'm not going to say that again. I'm going to say CDN. She's a French, as already mentioned by Pushpita, French Egyptologist and museologist. Actually, she started her life in the Louvre Museum. And early in her life, she became fascinated by the exploration in the Nile Valley of the remains of the monuments and temples built by about 40 dynasties, from during the Pharaonic and Greco-Roman ages, which range from around 3000 BC to 50 BC. BCE, yeah, to use the current terminology, before the Common Era. Earlier we used to say BC, which means before Christ, but then now to make it more secular, it is BCE, before the Common Era. The whole book is devoted in equal parts to three topics. One is, of course, Christiane, CDN, who spent her whole life. She died at the age of 97, if I remember correctly, excavating, recording, studying, and writing about the ancient Egyptian civilization that flourished for 3,000 years along the Nile. Then the second thing she talks about is that civilization itself, the pharaohs and the kind of culture they had, the life the common people led, etc. And then the third topic, which is covered by Lynn Olson, is actually the events of the modern world during and after the World War, the Second World War, because she was, in fact, the story begins sometime in the 1920s in Paris. In the beginning of her career, she was involved in the very beginning, in the hurried movement of the Louvre's priceless exhibits to hiding place in various chateaus and palaces along the Loire Valley, because the Germans were going to invade, and they had already appointed a team to loot all the exhibits from the Louvre, to transport them back to. I think Goering was the guy who was very fond of this, of collecting artworks. Next page, please. Now, archaeology is normally a very slow, meticulous discipline, one that cannot be hurried. However, so I think Pushpita mentioned that okay, let me go according to the chronology. The popular revolution and ousting of the Egyptian monarchy by a group of military officers led by Jamal Abdel Nasser. After that, the country undertook many development projects, one of which was the Aswan High Dam. There was already a dam on the Aswan, but it was a small one for irrigation purposes. So the government decided to build, to take it up to some 200, 300 meters. It's a very high dam. And which meant that basically the Nile Valley would flood, and all the rich tombs and temples and pyramids which were built along the Nile would be inundated. So there were frantic efforts by the world's leading Egyptologists to try to save the monuments like Abu Simbel and Philae for later generations to marvel at. But the Egyptian government said, look, we can't get involved in preserving all these things. If anyone wants to help, sure. And the Americans were the guys with the money, and they said, no, we are not interested in past things. And that was the time of Kennedy, and they said nothing. That you can do what you can, but we are not interested in the past. We are only interested in the future. So this is a riveting description about how the efforts spearheaded by Madam CD and involving a cast of characters, as already mentioned by Pushpita, Andre Malraux, Simone de Beauvoir, who was a passing reference to her, JFK, Jackie Kennedy, Onassis, Charles de Gaulle, even Maharaja Jagjit Singh of Kapurthala, who lived famously in London and in Geneva, in Switzerland, etc. And his kind of ex-girlfriend was the one who actually produced a lot of, of money to fund CDN's further excavations. Of course, every museum in the world, you name it, the Louvre, the Cairo Museum, the Smithsonian, the British Museum, the Metropolitan Museum, the Musée d'Homme in Paris, all of them were involved in this effort. Of course, now the option, they looked at various options. Abu Simbel has actually been cut into the rock, so it's not a question of being moved. You have to actually excavate the whole thing and try to move it. But it was huge. It was a huge thing. But they actually try to maintain the. I'll show you the pictures later in this presentation. The pictures of how they actually moved it block by block by cutting it. They use Italian marble cutters from probably from Carrara, and it was the whole thing was handled by German and Italian engineering firms. So this is soon after the war, mind you, when Germany and Italy were both quite devastated. And anyway, they managed it. Most of the funding was from the US and from Egypt, but also from France, Italy, and India. You'll be happy to know also contributed some $200,000, $300,000 towards the effort. Britain was still angry. They refused to help the Egyptian because they had been Nasser had nationalized the Suez Canal, which they owned half of, and they sent a force to try to take it back. And then I think Eisenhower said, "Not nonsense, you can't do that," and they had to get out, But they also finally gave $200,000. So most of the countries who were offered, who helped either technically or financially, they were given one or two monuments. They was told you can pick it up and take it back to your country, but you'll have to bear the cost. So the Metropolitan Museum in New York actually chose the Temple of Dendos. You can probably see it if you go to the Met. It's installed in a separate terrace, which with a glass dome around it. And yeah, next. So actually, it is beyond my capabilities to summarize such a book, because it's truly encyclopedic, and I would recommend that you read it. But before you read it, I would also suggest that you read about Jean-François Champollion, the French philologist who played a big part in deciphering the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and is actually one of the founders of Egyptology. So, for instance, you see, everyone thought the hieroglyphs were kind of ideograms or pictorial kind of language, but he managed to figure out that it was actually phonetic, So you can see how the Xerxes, the Persian emperor, assassinated emperor's name was spelt in Egyptian hieroglyphics. So next, please. Now, this is a picture. It's not a picture. It's a sketch from 1840s of Abu Simbel. So you can see Abu Simbel. The four statues there in the temple on the right, and the huge mound of sand, which ultimately had to be excavated to see those and to enter the temple. Next, please. Yeah, so this is a close-up view. I think this is a picture, perhaps, again from the before it was moved. The four seated figures. I think they all represent Ramesses II, and this, I think, is probably post. This is post the movement. So if you go on to the next picture, yeah. So this is how they actually excavated it. They cut them into blocks, or but very carefully. For instance, the face they didn't chop it, directly. They kept the face intact, chopped it behind, and inside, and reassembled it. So go to the next slide, please. So this gives you an idea of the scale of the statues. Of the monuments. Yeah. Wow. And the next, please. Yeah. So this is how they actually, so they kept the face intact, but just sliced it in such a way so that it would come and slot directly into, without any mark on the outside surface. And the little joints in between they made a special mortar to seal it. Next, please. So this is a very interesting picture because it's a kind of model which shows the original location of the temple of Ramses and another temple on the side, which, as it would have looked today, underwater. This is the water line, and the portion above is where they actually moved it and relocated it. Now, if you see, the interesting thing is that the orientation is the same, in the sense that the original temple was designed so that on a particular day in February, and maybe 6 months later, the sun's rays would come inside and light up the statues, which are inside, statues of certain gods inside the temple. So they also relocated in such a way that the same phenomena would be experienced in sometime in the middle of February when the sun is over at a particular angle. That's the only day, 2 days in the year, when the rays of the sun go inside the temple and light up all the statues, the four images of four gods. Except one, which is, I think, the god of death, who's always kept in darkness. So these other three statues images are lit by the sun. Next, please.
Fascinating.
Yeah. sorry. So that's my take on the book, and please read it for yourself. And thank you, Pushpita, for your choice.
Yeah.
And thank you, Kenny, for all that detail. I didn't take any thunder away from your story.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kenny, you are an Egyptologist yourself. The
Absolutely.
depth to which you went and gave us all this very interesting information about Abu Simbel. So thank you so much for
And
a very
thank
nice
you, Kenny,
presentation.
because we were there during our reunion in Egypt and we had gone to Abu Simbel. Of course, Kenny
Uh-huh.
wasn't there and Monty wasn't there and Milan wasn't there. But we
Right.
were there and we were, thank you very much for explaining it so nicely.
Yeah, really.
We were there
I
for a
think
very brief
Yeah.
period, I think about
No,
2 hours.
thanks. But I think, there's so much of stuff. I literally, it's an encyclopedia, the word which I
Yeah.
used. But you
Yeah.
need to read the book, but it's so well written and well researched. And it's
Very
just,
nice.
Very well
yeah.
researched book. Yeah.
Yeah.
it was an amazing book. I hope I had read it before I went to Egypt, frankly.
Yeah,
been-
so you should make another trip now. Of course,
Yeah,
maybe
another
not
trip
right
again.
now.
Yeah, I
Wait
want
for
to-
a few months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way they have covered this, the three parts you mentioned, Kenny.
Yeah.
One was
Yeah.
the actual historical part, then the actual engineering fate of moving this Abu Simbel from one place to another, and third, the geopolitical thing of Nasser and Eisenhower and all those people during the Suez crisis. All three are very well explained.
There's one story which I wanted to actually, the one fact which Monty mentioned about Christian. Now, when she was 93 years old or something, some Spanish magazine sent a photographer and some writer to interview her, and during the process they found one of these objects, something like a stone object or something lying, in a drawing room, and they asked, "Is this something from Egypt?" She said she got very angry. She said, "I'm not. I don't consider
Yes.
that is thievery. How can you even think that I would take something from there and display it in my home?"
Quite
So this
right.
was at the age of 93. She never had a single object which from any of these digs or excavations in her
Wow.
personal possession. Yeah.
Yeah.
She also
Quite
mentioned that
an
she was,
amazing woman.
yeah.
Yeah.
She also
Fascinating.
mentioned she was very conscious about the fact that she should not have any Egyptian artifact in her house.
Yeah.
Egyptian. That was Egyptian.
Absolutely.
She might have had something else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kenny, again, on behalf of all of
My
us.
pleasure.
I wonder if
So
she was ever cursed.
now, next to speak is also one of the best choices we could have made because Saida, as most of you know, is a medical doctor and she is going to reflect on Everything Happens for a Good Reason by Kate Bowler, an autobiography of a cancer fighter at a young age. So, Saida, we are all eager to hear what you have to say about this autobiography. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And thank you for such an amazing presentation by Kenny and then Pushpita giving us introduction. That was all brilliant. And I personally enjoyed reading this book. I did not get chance to read other books, but from the sound of it, they sound very amazing, and I will read them. So this book, written by Kate Bowler, very interesting. I would like to, before I talk about this, I would like to thank for suggesting this book, for giving me an opportunity as well to reflect on this thought-provoking book. Of course, as a physician, it makes me understand a patient better, what they go through, how they, what they feel when we give them any news, good or bad. This is an honest account of a young woman who was diagnosed with colon cancer at a very early age, 35 years. Although colon cancer screening begins at age 45, it can be seen in younger people if they have family history or genetic predispositions. So Kate Bowler was a professor of theology in Duke and was working on her dissertation when she was given the sad news of the diagnosis of stage 4 colon cancer. Kate Bowler gives her readers a very candid account of her life, beliefs, and emotions. She shows her resilience with her good sense of humor. So life happens as we are planning other things. She was living a fulfilled life and perfect life as a wife and a mother when she started to have the symptoms of colon cancer. She makes us realize how life is so fragile and how it can change in a split second. This book gives us anatomy of the emotion of a human so vulnerable. We learn how we suddenly have no control of our lives. As she was having her initial symptoms and going through the diagnostic and treatment process, she showed us how she was so vulnerable and humble as she was shocked with the news. Um, how can God do this to me? Although devoted to her faith, she did not refrain from questioning the preaching of her religion. While faced with realities of terminal illness, she also examines how her faith interacts with prosperity gospel, a belief system that claims faith can lead to health, wealth, and success. She had the first-hand experience of the judgment by her prosperity gospel community. They questioned if she committed any sin to deserve this as a punishment. Um, One of the most important aspects of the book is Kate Bowler's courage. She forces, she faces shock, anger, and grief that come with confronting death. She questions if everything happens for a reason. Instead, she believes that no one should suffer for any reason. Instead, Bowler wants us to realize how our lives are so vulnerable and make us humble. So, as she underwent surgery and chemotherapy, this was very difficult time for her, but her resilience kept her afloat. I know a lot of patients who give up because of the difficulties they have to go through. They can't bear the pain of chemo and just, spread of the cancer. It's really painful. I mean, I had a patient just last week, and she was saying that, Dr. Shergill, I'm done. I cannot have my family go through this. I am done. I cannot tolerate, even though I was trying to tell her that, your rest of your body is okay. I think you can do it, you can bear it. But she's like, for what? But here, this young lady, she is so resilient and strong. And luckily, she has a very supportive uh, family, her parents, her husband. They are her silver lining, they are her backbone. And uh, so she was very fortunate that she had all that. And uh, God even blessed her with a beautiful son, Zach. So, although she had a strong faith in God, her strength was still herself, Kate Bowler, because she thought that if she gave up, everything will fall apart. So, she has to survive. And that was her strength. Uh, she now what is she doing now? I think she has beaten it. She is in remission. She now has a podcast and has many sponsors and spiritual speakers who had similar experiences. She has turned her misfortune to a good fortune and encourages people to get involved in their health at early age. I feel that Kate Bowler's story has some interesting and unusual moments. She was very young at the diagnosis of her metastatic cancer. Her symptoms at the presentation of cancer are also a little bit unusual. Usually, colon cancer presents with like anemia, blood, but she had this pain, and which is kind of unusual. We usually, I mean, she went to 30 plus doctors to get a CAT scan, which is kind of unusual being in America. So I just wonder if she had this exaggerated opinion of medical community in general. Um, Maybe because it had something to do with her religious upbringing, like science versus God kind of thing. Anyhow, I want to take this opportunity to emphasize that uh, death from colon cancer can be reduced by early detection. It is recommended that screening starts at age 45 and earlier if anybody has family history or genetic predisposition. So, it is important. Everybody should get their colonoscopies, so, and, talk to family members that this is something important, and we should always.
Second book was about colon
Thank you.
cancer.
Thank you so much.
Colonoscopy and
Saida, this was
colon cancer.
this was really so good because you were empathetic to her as a patient, and you also gave us suggestions as a medical doctor about how such challenges can be prevented. So thank you so much for that very
Oh, thank you
knowledgeable
for.
presentation.
Thank you.
Incidentally, Sudha wanted to join us today, but
Sure.
she had a better task of attending a Golu function because these are Navratri days. And
Okay.
she will be with her friends, but then she said she will watch the proceedings, recording.
Very good. Very good. Thank
Milind, you've got 21, by the way, now. You are happy.
Excellent. I should rejoice with all of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got the voting power.
Yeah. And so with those two very powerful presentations, reflections, we finally go on to the last and best, where Gautam will be reflecting on Swami Vivekanand by Chaturvedi Bhardwaj. And to do that, he is a very apt reflector because even though he humbly said he has never read anything on spirituality before, he has suddenly discovered this treasure shining light on spirituality like never before in the form of Swami Vivekanand. So, Gautam, please take it from here and enlighten us.
Thank you, Milind, and thank you, Monty, for this opportunity to reflect on Vivekanand. So to dive straight into it, let's start with why did he go to the West, including the US, for the World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago, 1893? What is that sound?
I'm so
I
sorry.
think
It's cricket. Somebody's
Can you-
microphone is on and you can hear the
That's-
I think it's a Chacha's feed we are getting that.
Yeah, I get the feeling. Yeah, we heard it last time also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Let me start again.
Chacha, can you mute, please?
Thank you.
Okay. So to start, why did he go to the West? including the US, but not limited to the US, for the World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893. He went because his guru, Sri Ramakrishna, said, "You have work to do. You have to bring comfort, morality, religion, education to the doors of the meanest and the most downtrodden. And for this, funds were required. Will the people of India spend money?" He says, "No. So I came to America to earn money, to realize my aim in life." So why was the World Parliament of Religions important? Because it was the coming together of all the major religions in the world for the first time ever. What did Swami Vivekananda say at the World Parliament? Number one, he profiled the place of Hinduism. "I thank you in the name of the mother of all religions." He spoke on the universality of religions. From the Gita, he quoted, "All men are struggling through paths, but all in the end lead to me." He spoke of tolerance. "My religion believes in universal tolerance. It also accepts all religions as true." He says, "My country provided shelter and refuge." And it's true. We sheltered the Israelites, when their holy temple was shattered by Roman tyranny. And who can forget the story of the Parsis when they came from Iran to Navsari? And he spoke of acceptance, nonviolence, charity. "We welcome the death knell of sectarianism, bigotry, and fanaticism." So what did he achieve at the World Parliament? Number one, he got money, which was the primary purpose for which he had gone. And the astonishing thing is that women led funding. He got the press to write about him. And the press said, the New York Herald said, the Chicago Herald said, "After hearing 30-year-old Vivekanand, we feel how foolish it is to send missionaries to this learned nation." And most importantly, he raised the profile of Hinduism, that of a world religion. He said that holiness and purity are not the exclusive possessions of any church in the world. And possibly he meant that church in the world to mean Christianity. Because don't forget that at the World Parliament of Religions, they also showcase technological advances of the US and the West. And perhaps trying to imply that the juxtaposition of this with religion aimed to highlight, therefore, also the superiority of Christianity. He said, "Every system has produced men and women of the most exalted character. And if anyone dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and destruction of others, I pity him." Can I have the next slide, please, Yanks? Post Parliament of Religions, he came back to India and he spoke of 6 things, which became his guiding philosophy. I'm sorry, Yanks, we'll have to go back to the previous slide.
Yeah.
Correct. So he came back to India and he spoke of 6 things, and those were his guiding philosophy. Number one, his wanting to liberate the masses. "I do not believe in a God or religion that cannot wipe a widow's tears or bring bread to an orphan's mouth." Essentially saying, carry into practice that which you call your religion. Number two, he said of religion and society, "Our Hindu ancestors gave liberty to the soul and religion grew. But they put the body under every bondage and society did not grow. In a word, our society is horrid, diabolical." Number three, he spoke of the service to fellow men, the universal idea of religious life. He said about 1 million sadhus and about 100 million Brahmins suck the blood out of our poor. We have to give back to the nation its lost individuality and raise the masses. He spoke of a great need for organization and social action in Hinduism, much as he had seen in the West. And he actually converted his fellow monks from individualistic to the universal idea of religious life, which said that you must participate in public spirit and organized service. not be aloof from the world and its cares and sorrows, as was the prevailing Hindu idea sanctified by tradition. He affirmed the place of women. He said, there is no place, there is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved. It is not possible for a bird to fly on only one wing. This holds back India even today. And finally, he said, there is no right that anyone has to reject anyone else. We reject none, theist, atheist, agnostic. There are no codes of morality as to conduct, character, eating, drinking, except if it injures others. Eating meat may help one, eating fruit another. Each is welcome to his own, but has no right to insist that others should follow his way. And that's so relevant in the Indian context today. Universally, he opened dialogue, self with self, self with others. To Christians, to Hindus, to social reformers, to monks. At the end of the day, he was the strongest challenge of Hinduism to Christianity. But much more interestingly, he was also the strongest Hindu challenge to what the Hindus had turned religion into. Indeed, his comments on Hindus, Hindu society must be read again today as dialogue of self with self. So from the ground of the Vedanta, he said that the basis is Rita. Rita is the order and custom that makes life in universe possible, the duties, the laws, the conduct, the virtues, and the right way of living. Dharma and karma came much later. Dharma, which is duty, in accord with Rita. Karma, which is the accumulated effects of good and bad actions. The only way, he said, and before him, Sri Ramakrishna had said as well, the only way is love and sympathy. The only worship is love. But this too, he made clear, is incompletely stated in the Upanishads. Neti neti. Neti neti meaning not this alone. As an example, in the context of his brother monks, not just bhakti and mukti, not just renunciation for you as an individual, but also service to mankind. That I've understood is the living Vedant. It exhorts one to learn, change thinking, grow, all in the service of man. Thank you, Monty, once again.
Thank you, Gautam. I really appreciate your reminding us of all the important teachings of this revered monk, and his teachings and lessons were timeless. So thank you so much for highlighting all of them so well.
Thank you,
with that,
Milind.
yeah. So with that, we
I know,
move on with
sorry,
three excellent reflections. Go ahead, Pushpita.
very, very quickly. I know everybody has very kindly thanked me for selecting you. I just want to convey that gratitude to Milind, because he's the one who suggested the names.
Thank
So
you,
thank you,
Monty.
Milind.
Yeah, we all work as a team, and that's how we get to this excellence. So wonderful overview, excellent reflections. So now it's all open for your reactions and thoughts. So please go ahead. Wherever you'd like to begin.
Looks like everyone is in deep thoughts.
Yes.
It was a very comprehensive presentation by everyone.
Yes.
And a real deep dive into all the three books. And so really they said almost everything that is to be said.
Very good. Yeah.
There's something I wanted to ask Saida. She talked about, testing for colon cancer and normally after 45. But for people who like us who are, in late 60s or 70s, is it necessary to get this done?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's every 10 years, is starting from 50 or 45. So absolutely, yeah.
Chacha, I just did a colonoscopy last year.
I have never done it.
It's a
That's why I asked.
necessary evil, Jaja. Just get it done.
Yeah. And just to assure everyone, it's a pretty painless process these days. You don't even realize you've gone through it when you are done. And yet the diagnosis, whether positive or not, is important at our age. So
I must say, in Australia, every 2 years, we are sent a colon cancer kit by the government to do the initial screening.
Yeah.
We have it here as well, Cologuard. Yeah, it's good every
Yeah,
2
we are not getting this in California in our clinic, Saida. But anyway, I heard about this screening as well.
Yeah, it's every 2 years you can get this test. It's a stool test kit, and it can detect cancer, but it's not like colonoscopy. You know, if it is positive, then you still have to get colonoscopy. And colonoscopy is good for 5 to 10 years, you know.
Is it true that the vegetarians normally don't have this problem? Basically meant to be it's a problem only if affecting the meat eaters, especially red meat eaters.
No, no.
Well, you know, it is seen in you know, all people, but probably less in vegetarians, because yes, high cholesterol does contribute, and yes, meat eaters can have higher cholesterol, but likewise, you know, vegetarians can also have high cholesterol. Obesity can affect, but it's still, it can be seen in vegetarians too.
And
As a
it's your
matter of fact, one of,
metabolism, isn't it?
sorry?
It's finally is your metabolism and how it's breaking things down as well.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's but I have seen in vegetarians as well. Yeah, my one friend who got diagnosed at actually age 48, and just like Kate Bowler, stage 4. So it was pretty advanced, but she did really well. She's a trooper.
Yes. Coming back to the living Vedanta and to Gautam's fabulous reflection, it's amazing to hear, Trivi. What about that you have such an old relationship to, and you and
Yeah,
Anu?
I mean,
I know.
every time we go to one of those, the temples, one of the local whatever ashrams, typically there's a picture of him on the wall, alongside Swami Vivekananda. They always have the Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda's photos, and then typically they have the 12, I think it's 12 or so original monks. Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shraddhananda, etc.
Nityanand.
Yeah, and then one of them is Premananda, who's Anu's grandmother's brother.
So when Swami Premananda, when the grandmother's brother left to become a monk, what was the reaction in the family? Is there any history of that?
I think that there's it was quite a big deal, right? And I think but Anu's gone off to, I don't know, she's just come back from a conference, so we need to ask her. But it's a big thing, step to become a monk, because you're supposed to renounce your family and it's that's why this book, what I found interesting about the book was there's a section which spends quite a lot of time on how family is, even Swami Vivekananda always would inquire about his mother and how she was, and so on.
The
you know,
other interesting book is the autobiography of a yogi,
Yeah.
which is again a similar story.
Right.
So,
Also
but
go
going
back-
ahead with what Trivi just said,
Hmm.
in fact, I found it quite astonishing in the book that he was aloof. Swami Vivekananda was aloof from reality in a sense.
yeah.
I mean, he did not mention, the book does not mention his 6 sisters' names in any communications. I believe he did not mention his sisters' names in any communication,
Correct.
excepting the one sister that died, in the course of
Correct.
the book.
Yeah, who apparently committed suicide, or
Fascinating.
maybe even sati, right? Yeah.
I mean,
And so that's
can you
quite
This
imagine-
thing, I find it strange.
But
I go back to my living.
reality is a very, it's a point of reference, isn't it? What we think is reality
Sure.
was not really his reality, because
Sure.
he was not
Sure, but
really...
I'm not able to, the Living
yes.
Vedanta talks about neti neti. It says not this alone. So how can a man be completely aloof from the physicality of his family and that not becoming part of neti neti? So it confuses. It leaves a lot of thoughts in your mind.
Gautam, he had money sent to his mother and his sister. So was he divorced
At
from
the end of his life, at the
Achha,
end of her life, I'm sorry. As per the book, Anjali, I don't know anything more than the book.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Even me.
the-
I also is from the book only.
Yeah.
The other thing really
Unfortunate.
is to be connected and to be attached are two different things. So he may well be connected, but he wasn't attached. And I think the biggest lesson for me has been in life to learn detachment. And I'm very grateful even more to my younger son, who has been on this very early journey of enlightenment and shares his lessons with us. But that being able to, and when he turns around and says to me, "Mom, I love you just as much as I love the next door neighbor," that is true unconditional love.
Yeah.
So there is.
That's
so
very big,
I used to-
Monty.
The
I
other
used
book
to
that
often
you
say to
mentioned,
him, motherhood
Yeah.
is all about unconditional love, and to which he said one day, that is not so true. That's not true at all. You only love because I'm your son. That is the condition of your love. So don't tell me motherhood is unconditional love.
Fascinating.
Interesting. The autobiography of a yogi that you mentioned, Pushpita, who is that written by? That's somebody else, right?
Yeah. Paramahans is his name?
No.
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 What's the name?
I think it is Paramhams, something like that.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Paramhams.
It's a very famous old book,
But
I've read it, it's very good.
He's not
And then
connected with
Anu's father says that
Ram
everyone
Krishna.
should read
Paramahamsa
Ishawood's
Yogananda.
book. Right.
Paramhans Yogananda, right?
Paramahans
Yeah.
Yogananda.
It's a very good book. I think everyone should read it.
It is.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
And then Anu was talking to her dad, who obviously must have, he doesn't talk much nowadays, but her father says that the best book is by Christopher Isherwood. If I'm not mistaken, the book is called Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna and His Disciples. Or something like that. Yeah.
You
I
post
haven't
it on
read
the
that
group.
much.
Rivi, will you post it on the group?
I've just, on the group.
Chat
already.
I mean, not on the group chat, but on the
I'll put
WhatsApp.
on the WhatsApp. Yeah.
Yeah, put it on the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Those of you who
Ishan
are
and I
interested,
visited Belur Mat recently, and much to us, Belur Mat was built after Vivekananda died.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what is amazing to see is how the spirit of service, now that Gautam has explained it so well in his, the fact, what distinguishes the Ramakrishna mission from many others is the spirit of service that is imbued in Belur Mat. And the number of projects that they do and the amount of service that they do for humanity and how flourishing it is. So the money that earlier only came from America is now coming from the Indians as well. The donations are coming in. So I think that transition from the monks having to live a monastic life and how Gautam pointed out that it is now service to humanity. I think it's a very big transition that
In
Vivekananda.
fact, that was what Vivekananda initiated, right? Because he said, everybody should serve. That's why they have my mother used to work in the hospital, you know, for a month every year in Haridwar.
It is so similar to Kar Seva.
Kar Seva, yes.
And
exactly.
now the Ramakrishna Mission work has also gone into the IITs. If some of you know, IIT Delhi has a lady monk who works for the Ramakrishna Mission, who conducts lectures on self-realization and on the philosophy of Vedanta and so on. And the IIT students and faculty are really glad that somebody like her, who's an intellectual and also a monk, comes and talks about these issues.
I mean, that's good, because our local center here in San Francisco, every Sunday there's a talk, and they broadcast it on YouTube, on Zoom, and everything. You know, I mean, it made it now very accessible.
And it's a
And
fascinating
they also
example
do the
of,
same at Stanford, by the way. These same San Francisco monks.
It's a fascinating example of how quietly they have been processing the spirituality in different countries. In every major city in the US, they have a Vedanta society. And the one in Atlanta is the one I visit whenever I can. And it's really very calming and yet very educating in many ways. So
Gautam, what you were talking about the women and the sati and the fact that he kept saying that while without one wing, the bird can't fly. But there was also a contradiction in the book that the sisters were not mentioned and so on. Anything further on?
No. Anjali, I don't think there's a connect between the two. The sisters not being named. Sorry, Chacha Bolo.
I think, Gautam, there is a connect. If you read the book, it says that Paramahansa Ramakrishna said to keep away from women and from gold. So when they look at women, he said all women should be looked at as mothers. So the distinction between woman and mother, I think, has been brought out. This is from what I gather in the book. And he never treated Sarada Devi as his wife, but I think a companion, or the particular term which was used. And they were never seen together. She would never go to his room, except, of course, in the last stages when Ramakrishna was unwell. And the women were always kept away
Your point I'm taking, Chacha, but look at the words that the man used, Vivekanand, when he talked about women, affirming their place. He said, you cannot fly on one wing. That means what he was trying to say is that there is one wing flying and you're stopping the second wing, which is the woman. So the first wing must be man, and man is not defined as father, grandfather, son, husband, whatever. It is man vis-a-vis woman. And that is exactly the issue in our country today. I recently saw a TV show of Karan Thapar interviewing Brinda Grover, who's an activist, and she's a Supreme Court lawyer and stuff. And she says the issue of the way we treat women, all the rape, etc., that happens in India, how can it stop? Because in your household, when a boy is born, you say, Bhagwan aa gaya. When a girl is born, you're saying, how do I collect dowry and make her, she's just here temporarily. And I'm going to send her away to somebody else's house. So, the status of women in the minds and hearts of humans, Indians in their homes, is so bad. It continues to be. That's the thing that he's talking about. You're still asking the country to fly on one wing. You may then give statistics of so much women employment, so many women in the Rajya Sabha, but it's a lot of bullshit at the end of the day. Because in your own home, you don't treat the girl as an equal to the boy.
But that
I don't know how many people agree with me.
Even in the US and others also, women are treated just as badly.
I'm not interested in the US. I'm interested in India.
India, you are saying, but it's the same situation. Why only
that's okay.
So, I'm not saying that in India that is the patriarchy of the world.
To a large extent, you're right,
All religions are reflecting patriarchy.
Yeah, Christianity does, the Quran
Yes,
does.
they all reflect patriarchy. So whether it is Swami Vivekananda or anyone else, they are all ultimately again influenced by religion. And
By
for
the
that
way,
matter,
Hindus.
just Ramakrishna.
So I would suggest a different view, Vinita.
Yeah.
I also thought that this came from religion and so on, but I read a very interesting book recently called Work, Mate, Marry, Love by a lady called Deborah Spar. And what Work, Mate, Marry, Love.
Okay.
She ascribes the patriarchy to technology. She says that actually our society is influenced by technology in a way that we don't understand. And that when we were all nomads, men and women were equal, and it didn't matter whom a woman married and there was no marriage. She could sleep with whoever she wanted. Anybody could have any babies and all. But when men became farmers, then they had land which they had to stay in one place and pass down to their children. Then they wanted to know that the children they were passing it down to was their own.
Correct.
So then they domesticated the woman, made sure that she was she was married. Purity became important because you didn't want another man's seed inheriting the farm. She takes this through the Industrial Revolution, where women and children used to work in the factories. And the UK introduced a policy, England introduced a policy in those days that women and children could not work in the factories because they were paid less and they were therefore taking jobs away from men. So even the policy that women and children were weak and should not work in the factory, and it was only to protect the men's jobs. And if you read Ken Follett, you will see that, in Pillars of the Earth, it's described so beautifully. And then if you come to the modern world, she says, now that you can have a child without a uterus, you can have a test tube baby, you can have a surrogate. Society as we know it is breaking down. You have gay marriage, you have lesbian marriages, you have and everything is accepted because you no longer need a uterus to actually produce a child. And so the tracing of the relationship between technology to society explained to me patriarchy in a very different way. It's worth reading. And maybe discussing when my turn comes next time, I'll maybe suggest this book because the interplay and the understanding of patriarchy in this, because patriarchy is, right.
Actually, would you put it in the group again, please?
Yeah.
Hari, could you put that book name in the group?
In the WhatsApp group or here?
No, WhatsApp group.
WhatsApp group, please, Anjali.
But Anjali, what you're saying is correct. That is true. But at the same time, what is religion? Religion is nothing but in Marxist terms, and this is also a very socialist view. What you're saying is that the superstructure ultimately just reinforces the infrastructure, which is what you're talking about. And superstructure is nothing but religion.
I agree.
It exists.
I agree, Vinita. I agree. That's why I always love these discussions, because you always bring in a different perspective. Thank you.
Guys, if I can come in.
But I also wanted to mention just one more thing. Sorry, Ishan.
No.
And that was that in Calcutta, besides Belur Math, there's also a Sharda Math. Belur Math was Ramakrishna's mission, and Sharda Math was the wife. So a lot of women and all used to go and stay in Sharda Math. My own mother's chachi used to go regularly every year and spend time there. So just kind of.
I have one observation with Vivekananda book, which is that this guy humanized him like hell. To me, Vivekananda has always been a stern figure, strong body, strong mind, and he made him out to be a guy who's quite cool, I mean, he grew up in a cool household, probably with Bagan buddies, okay? And he then goes chasing American women for money all over the universe. I found it very cool, actually. I mean, he could have been in marketing. I mean, he was basically marketing Vedanta globally.
Ishan, this is what has happened in New York. The New York head, Sarvapriya Nanda, his father was the chief secretary of the Odisha state. And his uncle is my batchmate from IIT Delhi. The day he finished MBA, he said bye-bye to his dad and mom and he says, as far as I'm concerned, you don't exist. And he took up the order of
Really?
Ramakrishna. Yeah. He's a 38, 39-year-old guy. He's the head of Ramakrishna Mission in New York. Swami Sarvapiriyananda. He is fabulous. Absolutely fabulous to hear. And his Gautam, his Misho Moshai, his Mosha, Partha Roy's IIT Delhi 74 batch. So we get to hear a lot about what this guy does, and just fabulous. Sarvapriyananda.
We are constantly in
I have a friend. Ishan and I have a friend who was one of the founders of NSDA, National Stock Exchange. You can imagine how smart he was and what sort of a career he had in front of him. And at the peak of his career, he left his wife, he left his job, and he's still a monk at the Ramakrishna Mission. His wife and he continue to be in touch with each other. They are best friends. But he says his life is about service. So again, what Gautam pointed out about service being, the driving force of Vivekananda was so important. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but there's one more thing. If you look at, Ishan, you go ahead and then I'll add my bit.
No.
So, if you think about Sri Ravi Shankar, or you even think about Swami Chinmayananda, the themes are the same as Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah,
that service is
100%.
more important. That service is more important. So in some ways, he initiated a huge change. We talk about all the Arya Samajis, Brahmo Samajis being reformists, but the real reformist was Vivekananda. Maybe that's why his influence is so far-reaching.
In a way, like in the world of classical music, Ravi Shankar was the ambassador of Indian classical music for the world. I think Swami Vivekananda did the same thing for Indian spirituality. He brought it to the world in such a fascinating way.
That's why he's a marketing guy. Yeah.
Also, Ishan, he said stuff that was so contrary to anything. Don't forget, we are in 2024 now. This man was talking in 1893 and 1895,
That's how
the kind of concepts that he presented
Yeah.
were so different from the way the world moved then. He was a fascinating guy. Fascinating.
And
I mean, how many men could talk about bringing women onto the same pedestal as man? How many people could talk about telling your monk that, listen, pal, enough of your bhakti and mukti, just forget it. That's for yourself. Now go out and do service to mankind.
Yeah, and
people were doing stuff like that. Yeah.
Gautam, sometimes we forget the teacher, because whatever Swami Vivekananda taught all over the world
was
is
Ramakrishna.
what he learnt at the feet of Ramakrishna Paramahansa. So
let us listen to what Ishan's...
you need a teacher of that caliber.
Let us listen to what Ishan's complaint. I mean, he says that he's a marketing guy. So, I mean, can you elaborate? Why do you think such a great man is just a marketing guy?
Not just. Why are you denigrating our own profession? Not just. Okay. But what I'm saying is that he packaged elements, some contrarian, some conformist, some globalizing. Okay. I mean, he found commonalities. That's what brands do. He made Advaita, Vedanta.
Anything that is a mass-based is a brand or a marketing by your definition. It is true. But
he made Vedanta. Look, he's got Bostonian women who are like tight as anything. Okay, all talking about. He told them, no, Christianity also is okay, Islam is okay, beef is okay, pork is okay, I'm with everybody. He was actually collecting people and increasing his sphere of influence. And with that, he globalized Vedanta.
But to be able to influence people, you have to be able to do that. It's often the intent behind that, what's driving that influence is more important than the act of influence.
So he had a strong product. I'm not saying he didn't have a strong product, but what I'm saying is that in this book, I think the service that the book does is not to explain Vedanta and all. And there are better books for that. The service this book does is to humanize and try and tell you why this guy was so successful. He died at 39. It's like there are stories about Alexander the Great. Okay, there are stories about Vedanta, which a story of Vivekananda which lasted 100 years. You go to all, I mean, we have in Dalhousie, we have a signed photograph of Vivekananda from somewhere. Yeah. Probably my father-in-law's mother had it or something.
No. This is from my mother's side, darling. We were devotees. That's why I remember before
That's
you and I got married, we went to Belur Math and took his blessing.
Belur Math. But I like Belur Math, by the way. Huh? When we drove back from Bhutan and all that after the visit, we were together. We went to Belur Math and, But that having been said, I think, to me, the interesting part was a human side of what made him tick.
I tend to agree with Ishan.
Because other than that, it's all about strong mind, strong body. I've read that Parliament of Religion speech that's famous. Okay, but nobody has an insight into the fact that he grew up in a house which probably had bagan badis and dancing girls and, the then Bengali aristocrat, which were completely ayyash. Yeah? In fact, his father died broke. I know like a lot of these families, Gautam. Okay, so, I mean, through that atmosphere, he had a great guru who gave him product. But I think that Ramakrishna Paramahansa added to Vivekananda added to Ramakrishna Paramahansa. He would have been some guy, some Swami in Calcutta, floating about with Kali. He wouldn't have been a global icon. So they basically
I think, Ishan, I think we are trying to assess this through human eyes.
Yeah.
I think it's a mission much beyond, much bigger than that. No matter where he grew, no matter what he did, he had come onto earth for a mission, and he would carry that through. I mean, there's another person I follow quite sort of try and follow some of his lessons is Sadhguru. He is another, and I think these are masters who will keep coming onto this planet till we have all learned whatever lessons we need to learn. So it's not about, I think we are drawing parameters from our very human eyes.
That's true.
And I think, whether we all agree or not, a large part of this is also sort of wedded to our understanding of, in Hindu philosophy, of rebirth. That there are people like these who may have come to life more than once. They have evolved and as a result have gone to a stage where at an early age of 39, he had achieved everything that people don't achieve even when they've reached 80. We have in Maharashtra a saint called Jnaneshwar, who is a similar person, who passed away in his late 20s because he decided to take Samadhi. And by then, he had commented on the Gita and written the Jnaneshwari, which was 9,000 verses on the Bhagavad Gita. And it is the way we interpret the Bhagavad Gita very often because of the wisdom that he brings to that book that we hold in reverence. So I think these are people who arrive at a very evolved stage of life and as a result speak to us at that higher level.
I
Otherwise,
don't
it's
know
very
if
difficult
you've read Many Masters, Many Lives. Have you read that, Milind? Brian Weiss.
No, I haven't. I should.
That's very, very interesting. There's and then there's a sequel to that of Messages from the Master.
Okay.
So he talks about these, exactly what you're saying, many masters who live and where our soul goes and spends time with the master before we come back on earth.
Absolutely.
And this is not Hindu. He's not he's a Westerner. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think all